How's it going, everybody? I'd like to thank everyone for stopping by. And in this episode of Tech Support Thursday, yes, I know I did not upload on Thursday. I was a dork and I forgot. Thursday was a very busy day for me. So yes, I forgot to upload. My apologies for those of you that were waiting for it. So I'm going to go ahead and knock it out today and go through all that. So for those of you that have been watching the channel on a regular basis, I do appreciate it, subscribed and unsubscribed. But if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the videos, and share the channel. So I started releasing the Cisco Data Center 9000V. I should update that Nexus 9000V, and just realized that. I started releasing the content for that series, and we're a few videos in, and I was getting a lot of communication back from a lot of you guys, which I'm actually really happy to get communication back. And you guys seem to be really enjoying the series, so that shows me that I went the right direction with it and it was a good idea to cover it. So a couple questions like, are you looking to do a series on ACI, or any desire to do a series on ACI? 100%. I would love to dive into ACI. I guess the big thing is, any major technology that is, I don't want to say just anything, but like new, like software defined. I've actually got a big soft spot for that right now. I don't know why, other than maybe it's cool, but I've been spending quite a bit of time in VMware, specifically NSX and NSXT. NSX for vSphere and NSXT for data center. So I'm actually really enjoying the process. So and one of the things that I used the VXLAN series to do was to get a better understanding of how VXLAN works holistically, because NSX for vSphere, ACI use VXLAN, NSXT uses Geneve. I'm actually in the process of rebuilding my lab for NSXT. I'm planning on doing some content for that, as well as for vSphere. I really want to dive into NSX, like not just understand it from a high level. I'm like doing the labs. I've used CBT Nuggets, actually has a really good NSX for vSphere video series, and I'm planning on going back through that because it's something that I want to dive into deeper, and NSXT become kind of, that be my next thing, because data center virtualization is cool, but use that also as a way to study for the DCB exam. So that's kind of my goal. But a lot of really good positive feedback when it comes to that series. So I'm actually glad you guys are enjoying it. There's a question on ASAP AnyConnect client remote access VPN config via ASDM. I released this video a long time ago, but when COVID dropped, with the amount of people that were having to do RAVPN, this became a very popular video very quickly. And I actually got some feedback that was kind of hard to follow for people that weren't already familiar with ASA or remote access VPN. So I went in and I cleaned it up, and it seems that cleaning it up made it a lot easier to follow. So I do try to listen to feedback, as long as it's feedback that makes sense. So more compliments and thanks for the VXLAN series. Let's see here. And you can run VXLAN and the Nexus 9000Ds in EVE Community. That would be the free way of doing it if you don't want to pay for the license for EVE Pro, but it gets the job done. A huge thanks from somebody from India that was watching the VMware iSCSI shared storage, the VMware the basics, which the goal with I actually had a question about this the other day through Twitter, a direct message, and the question was, how come you have a couple different series on VMware? And the main one was, the basics was, in the event that you're working in an environment where you don't already have vCenter deployed, you have this stuff going, and part of it is for me just to go back through and keep those specific skill sets fresh. And I'm using this new stuff that I'm playing with right now, and I'll show you not in this video, I won't, but I'm actually working on a really cool lab, and I'm waiting for some stuff to finish installing and uploading and things like that so I can dive into it deeper. There was a compliment on SD-WAN 5, bringing up MPLS transport. Thanks for another great video. Reading through the Cisco Press book, and it just providing a little bit more information, because I didn't read the book a lot, maybe a few here and there topics that I was struggling to understand, but good stuff there. So let's see. So there's another compliment, overview of how SD-WAN operates on SD-WAN 2. I learned more in the first 10 minutes watching this video than 2.5 hours, pardon me, of Cisco live presentations. I do appreciate that. I try, I really do. And then we have vSmart template, or SD-WAN 29 vSmart template and setup and deployment. The person that's been commenting on these videos has been spending a lot of time going through the series, which is the whole purpose of me putting out the content the way that I do. There's a couple of comments that I got recently where there was some, I don't want to say negative feedback, but it was kind of like sarcasm and snarkiness to the comment, which, that's fine. To each their own. About not completing series. And the comment was geared towards the CCNP Encore and an RC series, which eventually I will get back to. But I got to the point where I just got burnt out. So I will be planning on doing that again. However, I'm thinking of changing the way that I do it. Instead of being pre-recorded videos, I'm thinking on like a Saturday and a Sunday, doing an hour or two a day of doing a live stream, and then focusing on a specific topic. So you guys can ask questions, it's live streamed, and then I can add it to the playlist afterwards. I think you can do that. And then play around with it that way. Instead of pre-recorded videos and you guys are asking questions, at least this way here, it's probably something I'm going to do for a couple of hours. I'm not sure if I'll go long term, like 2 hours each day, but I'm thinking a live stream would probably be beneficial for everyone, because then those of you that are coming from the CCNA world and you're working your way, you're into CCNP, and Encore is your first step, and then you're diving into an RC later. I figured that might be something you guys might be into. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see, and then if you want to have access to all the pre-configurations and the Eve topology files and all that type of stuff, just drop a membership. It's $10 a month. Grab a membership and you'll have access to that stuff, and then I'll continue to add more content to it, because I'm really trying to build that out so that it's so that anybody can watch it and anybody can have access to the content. Because it's so I actually got a question the other day: how come I charge for the topology files and for the configs? And I'm like, simple. It takes a long time to create that stuff. So you're not paying for the technical content. You're paying for the topology file and the configurations. That's what you're paying for. And I feel like that's only fair. If somebody wants to do the exact same thing but put everything out for free, that's on them. But I feel like it's a lot of effort and a lot of time put in. And what's the very first thing that people ask for? They want the topology file and they want the configurations, because either they just couldn't be bothered doing it themselves like I do, and lab up something 10, 15 times until you finally figure out how it all works, and then you can lab it up, and then you can have something that's like a proof of concept that you've built and get that squared away. There are people that just don't feel like they need to put the effort out, and if you don't feel like you need to put the effort out, that's not my fault. So if you don't want to put the effort out, if you want the convenience of just downloading something and uploading it to your e-file and then just copy and pasting, okay, well, you know what? You're going to pay for the convenience. I'm going to charge you $10 a month. The nice thing about it is once you pay it, download the stuff. I typically am updating that on a pretty regular basis. So if something new comes out and you didn't keep up your subscription, well, guess what? You have to re-up your membership and download the new stuff. So there's that. So those of you that are enjoying the SD-WAN series, I appreciate that. And I don't want to sound narcissistic, but you're welcome. but that's the reason I put it out there, was because I wanted to cover the technology and then put out some training on it that was me going through it and hoping that you guys would get something out of it. A lot of feedback on the Nexus 9000V series. There's like a bunch of comments on it. So this one's kind of a SD-WAN 24, VPN 1 standard and extended ACL via CLI. Especially for notification about protocol number 6 is TCP with a smiley face, which I'm going to interpret that as a little bit of sarcasm. And you know what? Good on you, sir, because I can't. The name is written in what I believe is Cyrillic, and so I'm presuming you're Russian or Ukrainian. And if I'm presuming incorrectly, please correct me in the comments below. I don't like to be incorrect about that type of stuff, but I don't know how to pronounce that. So that's not something I'm good at doing. I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that because the first two letters of your first and last name are MA, that your first name might be Martin. I could be. That's what I'm gonna guess, because I honestly have no idea what the other letters stand for or what they translate over to. So let's see. So the same person asked a question about installing the Nexus 9000V inside of Eve. So I went ahead and I recorded a video, and that's something I hadn't done. The video is recorded. It's the 000 video is the deployment of a Nexus 9000V inside of Eve. Although it's kind of weird, when I shot the video, it went pretty well, but then all of a sudden, what I was expecting is in Eve Pro, it'll actually load up the image when you go to power it on. It'll come down to the bottom, and you'll see like a load thing in text where you'll see it load in 8 meg chunks. It didn't do that in the video, so I thought that was a little weird. And there was a comment here. It says, "Great job and good real-life examples. So many networks are filled with these issues, largely because folks don't move beyond just enough to make things talk in their design." And that is 100% the case. So what he's referencing in this case, because I like your screen name though. Yup. I like that. Good on you. So what he's referencing is, in that video, I talked about how the campus LAN design is not always the best way to handle things for everything. So especially in a data center where you have a lot of communication that's layer 2 specific, that you end up using the typical campus LAN where you have VLANs and on a VLAN on every switch, and you have trunk links connecting all your switches together, like a traditional layer 2 network. And it can't, like if you're setting for your CCNA, for example, that's not going to scale well in a data center, especially if you've got lots and lots of VLANs. There's other ways of doing it. So if you need to connect, say, rack 1, switch 1 has an ESXi host with 10 VMs on it in one VLAN, and then you have rack 2 in data center 2 with switch 2, and they're not physically close to each other, and you need to connect layer 2 together. You could do what I described, where you could have VLANs everywhere, and then just, the MAC addresses are propagated throughout the backbone. That doesn't scale well. Or you could do VXLAN or any other overlay layer 2 extension protocol for that matter, and you could use the encapsulation of VXLAN to take that layer 2 information, wrap it inside of a VXLAN header, and then use a layer 3 backbone to connect your switches together. So you're running layer 3 at your access or your leaf level, and then everything else above it, leaf to spine or access to distribution, for those of you that come from the enterprise world, or core distribution access, it's all layer 3. And you're using tunneling protocols like VXLAN to bridge the layer 2 over layer 3, which is what an overlay protocol is supposed to do. So, but it's not a good idea to use the layer 2 everywhere, and then have it just, and especially in a data center, doesn't scale well. And that was my whole intention. And I went back and forth with that customer for a long time. And they were expecting things to just work the way that the network was built, because the way that they viewed the network was as a cost center, meaning it cost them money to have, number one, people run the network, number two, to buy equipment to get it all connected. They looked at the services that they sold and at keep it real high level. The services that they sold that connected to the network is where the profit came from, right? They looked at anything that was network related, firewall, switch, router, doesn't matter to them. An interconnected link between two switches, it didn't matter to them. That was a cost. It cost them money to put this into play in order to make this work, including the engineers that it took to run it. And trying to explain to them that the concept was, I tried to explain it in the kind of like how you would explain to a kid going to the store, right? You travel on roads to get from your home to the store to go buy groceries. If you live here in the U.S., you go to like a Walmart, or if you're in the upper Midwest like I am. I know Walmarts are everywhere. That's why I use it. It's ubiquitous. But the bottom line is, the Walmart is a server that connects to the network, right? The roads are the network, Walmart's the server. He looked at Walmart as the only thing that mattered, right? The roads that you use to get to Walmart are kind of just there, right? They're irrelevant to the conversation. But what happens when roads aren't kept up, right? They go to crap. If you've ever been to downtown Milwaukee or downtown Chicago, the roads absolutely suck. It's like you're having to play dodge the pothole game, especially in wintertime when it's really cold outside or right after it snows and the plow trucks come through. It's ridiculous. You're literally driving around potholes and dodging accidents. I'll never, funny actually, telling the story brought up a memory. Probably about a year ago, I was driving through downtown Milwaukee on my way to a customer site, and this car ahead of me, really nice car. I think it was like a Mercedes or something higher end, probably $100,000 car. This dude came flying past me in my car, and he cuts over in front of me because apparently he was in the wrong lane and needed to go right at the intersection, which was quickly approaching us. We were within 100 yards of the intersection, and he cuts it off in front of me, and I didn't see the pothole because the way that the road raised up, he got up and over that undulation, and as soon as he came over the top of this little crest of this little hill, there was a pothole right there he didn't see, and he hit that thing. He had been doing 60. And all I remember was the front end dropped, because I watched the back right end of the car lift up like that, and then shoot to the right. Because I watched the guy just jerk the wheel to the right. His front left tire completely came off the front the steering assembly. Right, the tire was physically detached from the car because he hit the pothole that hard. So, yeah, you people that live down south, y'all are lucky. Anyway, that was if the roads aren't maintained, they're going to go to crap after a while, and that's what happens. So, trying to explain to him that the network was crap and needed I didn't use those terms, but that's kind of what I was trying to imply. Trying to get him to understand that was, he didn't see it that way. And I said, if I go to a switch and I reboot it, that affects every server that's physically attached to that switch. So if I close down an intersection of a road, the cops, there's an accident, the cops have to close off the traffic. Well, guess what? Nobody can come or go out of that parking lot. And there might be 50 stores, might be an entrance to a mall, right? You might have a bunch of stores that are expecting that the roads are going to be available for paying customers to come into the store, right? Well, if the network is down, that means that users can't get to their services. But if we don't do things right with the network and build it to meet the needs of the network, it doesn't matter which way we go with it. It's going to, we're going to have problems. And that was the main thing I was trying to get across. Anyway, long story short, more compliments on... So when I released that video on EVE-NG deploying Nexus 9000V, I got a lot of really good feedback on that. Let's see here. So I did. There was a question on. It would be great if you could share the kind of hardware you're using to run EVE-NG on it. So the images I get from Cisco Modeling Labs or CML, and that is where I get that. I pay the $200 a year license. I actually have to go re-up both here in the very near future. I had to go re-up my CML license, and I had to go re-up my VMUG Advantage license, so I can my the timers that I have left on my licensing are quickly dwindling. Let's see here. Hi Rob, thanks for your content. Like yourself, I'm interested in VMware technologies. However, people ask me to spend most of my time on Azure, AWS. Can you please advise? The thing that I find interesting about learning cloud is I actually have an interest in learning cloud too. I'd love to go dive into AWS, and I plan on doing it. I just said there's some other things that I need to go do first. But learning cloud in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, GCP, that type of stuff is something I plan on doing in the future, because I've gotten to the point now where the industry has shifted from doing everything on-prem to doing kind of a hybrid approach. And that makes sense, especially with the state and the climate of our country right now with, all the pandemic and things like that. I won't share any of my thoughts on the pandemic or anything like that, but you're right. If you're planning on doing cloud, I think it's a good idea. I plan on doing cloud as well. And if you have, and the way I look at cloud is this: it's basically a data center you don't own the physical infrastructure to. So what that means is that if you understand how computing works on virtualization, whether you're dealing with VMware, Citrix, or any other type of platform that does virtualization, and then you also have the networking side from Cisco, like maybe a CCNA or a CCNP, something like that. If you have those two already, then all the other stuff that you're going to be learning with cloud, it's just going to be learning how that particular cloud platform does things a certain way, right? They're all going to have different terms for different things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're going to call, the network that the user connects to a certain thing, and then how you firewalls, load balancers, how you separate traffic from one another. All that stuff is just going to be given a term specific to that vendor or for that platform, and you just have to learn what they are. So I found that when I was going through AWS Cloud Practitioner, it was actually very easy to pick up on the networking stuff and even the compute stuff, because I understand how VMware works. So if you already have an underlying understanding of both computing from VMware, for example, and then networking from Cisco or any other vendor for that matter, Juniper, Arista, whatever the case might be, then you're already going to be in a pretty good spot, in my opinion. So it's take them one at a time, unless there's an absolute necessity based off of a project that you've been given that you have to deliver, where you have to pause one learning path to go study another one. For example, maybe you're learning AWS right now, but your customer's deploying on Azure, and you have to go learn Azure. And if you do, it's fine. I plan on learning all three, Azure, AWS, and Google, just because I think it's going to be cool to see exactly how all it comes into play. And one of the things I realized a long time ago was having to shift my study focus based off of the I won't say market shift necessarily, but the industry's directionality, right? Cisco's pushing hard with this whole Python programmability business. I really don't want to be a scripter. I don't really want to have to write code to do things. However, where I have been, I guess you could say, softening up that view of that and taking less of a programmatic, that's not what I want to do. Instead of looking at it that way, I'm looking at, okay, and I was having a chat with another engineer the other day, and I brought up my opinion on it, and he goes, okay, well, he's like, have you ever thought about looking at it like this? And he's like, instead of looking at it as like, you don't want to do that, do you really want to drive, if you have to make a change on, I don't know, like an entry in an access list to all of your devices for a specific thing, do you really want to have to log into 1,000 boxes to do that? And I'm like, that is a very good point. And the reason I say that is because that's really what we're looking for. When we look at programmability, we're not looking for people to be network engineers to become developers writing applications. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people to get comfortable with deploying solutions, and if you need to deploy a lot of the same thing to a lot of devices, whatever the config change might be, for example, do that in such a way to where you're using like a Python script to log into all of your devices and push these 4 or 5 lines of code, right? So you do it one time, and all you have to do is run a verification and make sure that that thing isn't the config took, right? That's what you're really doing. And so when he explained it to me like that, I go, well, that makes a lot of sense. But it's how it's conveyed to you is the bigger thing. That's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, okay, and I get this question a lot, and so I'm going to actually pause here for just a second. The number one question I get from students that I work with on a regular basis is, okay, I have a CCNA. Like, congratulations. Do I shift left or right, depending on how they word it, into Python and learning Python, or do I continue keeping my head down and start diving into CCNP? And my answer to that question is typically, well, it depends what it is you're trying to do at the end of the day. If you want to understand layer 2 networking and layer 3 routing better, then CCNP is the way to go. However, if you want to dive into, if you work for a company where your job is to make config changes on a regular basis, and you're doing them to a lot of devices every day, then Python would also make sense. But don't take Python so far to where you're now writing applications. Or maybe that becomes an interest of yours. I don't know. But take it as far as you need to get the job done that particular thing is driving you towards for the job. So I'll give you a classic example. SolarWinds has a product, I guess you could call it, called Config Manager. And I used that on a project, I don't know, probably 7-8 years ago now, to deploy QoS company-wide, like 3,000 or 4,000 devices. There's no way I would have been able to get that done in 3 or 4 months, which was the length of the project that we were looking at doing it in. That was our deadline. So I used SolarWinds Config Manager, and all I did, I took a Notepad doc, wrote the config out that needed to be done, and then got into logged into Config Manager, and then grabbed that Notepad doc, and it literally just took the contents of that Notepad doc and just pushed it to all these devices. So I've used automation before, but it wasn't Python, right? So the bottom line is use Python to do the job that you don't really want to have to do over and over and over again. Logging into 100,000 devices in order to make a config change. That's where Python comes into play. No one's expecting you to write applications in Python write web pages. That's not the goal of the network engineer to do that. You're using an automation tool to automate things that you don't want to do that are both redundant and repetitive or mundane. Basic things like adding an entry to an access list or pushing a new VLAN to your SD-WAN endpoints or whatever the case might be. Things like that. So that's why I say it the way that I do. If you don't understand why you need to learn Python, that's the key thing. It's not learn Python from the ground up, because that's going to be no different than you trying to get after your CCNP. Because now you're going to be like, no, I have to learn this programming language. No, it's not. You're learning the tool. You're learning Python to learn how to automate tasks that you don't want to do over and over again. That's what you're learning Python and how to do it. You're not learning it to, write web applications or whatever else you might be able to do with it. So just be aware of that. I'm gonna skip that question because I don't have another iWAN. iWAN is dead for as far as I'm concerned. It's been replaced with Cisco SD-WAN. I don't know anybody running iWAN. I asked the question about a year ago, and I got a couple of responses. So my suspicion is most companies are going to go SD-WAN. So iWAN, I don't know anybody running iWAN. I mean, I could ask Twitter and see if there's any feedback there, but definitely not. Let's see here. So a lot of feedback on the CCNA bootcamp that I'm going to be running. So on May 22nd and 23rd of this month, basically 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks, I'll be running a 2-day bootcamp. It's 8 hours. Right now it's $100. So if anybody wants to join in on that, you can. And then a lot of good responses on it. So I've only had a couple people register to it right now, so I'm going to let it sit for another few weeks, for at least a little bit. The problem, so one of the things that I'm planning on doing is running this boot camp, but I'm probably going to not continue to do it that way because I'm just not getting the traction that I wanted, or at least I was hoping for. I was hoping more people would jump on it, but apparently not for some reason. But thinking more along the lines of doing the membership and then doing it live just through YouTube. Get more traction. Anyway, let's see here. So a lot of the questions that I see are coming through are things that that's pretty much it. A lot of them are just thank yous and people running into problems on vManage versions that I've never dealt with before, so I couldn't even begin to tell you how to fix them. But this one came in a few hours ago on SD-WAN 4 onboarding vEdges to the controllers. Currently, you are using which version? Currently, you are using which version for CSR? I have version 16.9, but it doesn't work. So I'm not using. I don't think I'm using CSRs. No, I don't remember using CSRs in SD-WAN. I remember using iOS V routers in there because they were lighter weight, with 1 CPU with 1 gig of RAM. So that's what I was using for that. So that's what I can remember. I don't remember using anything CSR. So yeah. Other than that, that's it. I had a lot more comments going on, but a lot of them were geared towards the boot camp that I'm going to be running. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go dive back into VMware because it's awesome, and I really, really want to get NSXT working. That's my goal here. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see all of you next week. Sorry, this is a day late, but hey, you know what? Better late than never, right? Thanks everybody for stopping by and hanging out with me. I'll catch all of you in the next video.